Have a seat. You notice that, by the way, we all got the shirt memo. I think it worked out pretty well without trying. We have, I'm sitting there, but beyond there. Let's start right here. We got Ron Whitmore, the Deputy Director of the Department of R&D for the County of Hawaii. And next to him is Ben Sullivan, the Energy and Sustainability Coordinator for the County of Kauai. We have John, is it Nochi, the Deputy Director, Department of Transportation Services for Honolulu. And last, definitely not least, the Mayor of Maui, Alan Arakawa. So, welcome to Mayor. Thank you very much for being here. So let's start with you, Mayor Arakawa. One of the questions we don't ask enough, or some version of this, is what's the story we get to tell if we get things right? And so you know, we all know what happens if we get things wrong, but having that positive story that we can talk about, this is exactly what we try to do. What is that story in Maui?
In order to be able to get what we're working on done correctly, we really have to look at what are the endpoints we want to be able to achieve. If we're looking at 100% sustainability in what? And how does it coordinate with everything else that the community needs? There's only so much money, there's only so much manpower, there are only so much resources the communities can have. If we don't integrate everything that we do so that we have multiple benefits from it, we're going to find that we're short in the community funding and personnel. So when we're looking at sustainable electrical base, how are we going to be able to bring in sustainable agriculture? How are we going to bring in sustainable water? All of the assets that we need, transportation, how do we combine all of those into the solutions as we're working toward 100% sustainability with electrical? As this has been evolving, we first started off with, we're just going to do electric company, home power. And now you've seen the military is getting involved in it. Now you're seeing the airlines are getting involved with it. How do we do airplane fuel? What are the costs? We're starting to look at how are we going to create bus systems. But we also have to look at when we're using these assets and we're trying to be able to create it. Honolulu has gone into H-power. Big Island started using geothermal. We have different alternatives that are coming up. As we are working through the system, new inventions are coming up, new innovations are coming up. We'll someday be working very strongly with ocean thermal or ocean movement possibilities. It's how we are going to get from point A to the end goal where we're looking at a completely sustainable type of community, because it's not going to be 100% all electric. It's going to be how do we find the best combination of all the uses that we're trying to put together to be able to get where the community will be best suited. That's what's going to have to happen.
So the story you want to be able to tell us, how did we reach the energy transportation, the mandated goals in a way that included so many other aspects of energy and of agriculture and water and housing and everything else, and how do we make that inclusive within the community?
Absolutely, because we have many, many challenges within our community that have to be met. In Honolulu and throughout the state, we're looking at sea level rise. How do you incorporate the solutions of transportation? Because we have to move all of our roads, we're going to have to move all of our electrical systems, we're going to have to be able to reinvent how we're going to relocate our sewer systems. All of those kinds of things have to come into play while we're going to complete 100% electrical,
So it really is about the story that is about how we address the energy and fuel and solved a lot of other addressed a lot of other societal problems, challenges in the process around housing and equity and food and water and all of that.
How do you address those challenges while you're trying to be able to address the energy crisis? Because all of those are going to come into play.
Okay. John, let's talk about Honolulu. What does that look like for you, that story?
I think when you talk about achieving a measure of success in everything, I always like to think of success as a time when you're at the beginning of a path you're choosing a path and a direction. People tend to think of all the things that can go wrong, all the costs, all of the problems that path is fraught with. But I think success comes at a point when you kind of reach a certain point in that path where something ridiculous, something super visionary, something just out of the ordinary becomes very normal in people's thought. So I think the path to sustainability, we talk about sustainability right now as a goal, and we talk about it as if it's something different, something alternative that we need to achieve. And I think the real measure of sustainability is when we achieve a certain status or a certain amount of normal practice where we don't even think about it. That becomes our way. That's just how it's done. And even listening to some of the really learned high school students that preceded us on the stage, they want to think that way. They want to say that this is the way that we've always done it. And I think when you say, coming from government, I'm sure Mayor Arcao might hop on with this is the way we've always done it, is usually a pretty toxic statement. But when it comes to something like sustainability, I think we've achieved a measure of success at some point when people say, well, this is just how we've always done it.
So the story you'd like to be able to tell is that we so succeeded in doing what we did that sustainability sort of went away. It's no longer sustainable energy. It's just energy. It's no longer sustainable food and water and communities. It's just food, water, and communities. So it becomes just natural part of the fiber. Let's move over to Ben.
Same question. I think what these gentlemen said is right on point. It's really about integrating these things. And so I think we can look at the tourism industry as a great example and one that's gotten a lot more conversation lately. The tourism industry and the large hotels, almost across the board have really been doing great work within their own properties for decades, I would say, in terms of putting in PV, in terms of recycling, in terms of meeting the expectations of the guest with regards to their environmental consciousness. And the thing that's really exciting for us to see on Kauai is there's this recognition among the visitor industry that the next phase of our evolution is really more collaborative in that, all the way, it's not just government trying to pull people together, it's the industry itself saying, how are we going to work with government, how are we going to work with the utility to solve some really pointed problems? And one example I'll give you is traffic on Kauai. So we can solve the energy problem at the same time that we solve the traffic problem. And I think there's very acutely increasing awareness of that. We talk about the lack of federal funds, and we really have this blunt recognition that we are not going to solve our problems by expanding our roadways. And so we arrive at this place of, okay, we're going to do things different. And it's crisis, but it's opportunity. So we're going to look at creating shuttles for visitors. We're going to try to pry open that first decision of, do you just get in a car when you get off the plane, or do you get to your hotel and then have a choice of different modes, whether it's bike share, or it's a scooter, or it's the path, or it's renting a car for 2 hours. So in my view, tourism is a key part of that. I don't want to go on too much, but integration and collaboration at a increasingly broad scale.
So what I'm hearing this story being, I'm trying to just formulate the stories we can talk a little about how we get there, is that you're able to address a lot of issues that didn't just solve challenges or ensure resilience, but actually created products and services that were better for tourists, for tour operator, or the hospitality industry. But they became sustainability equals better.
One of the initiatives Mayor Carvalho has put a lot of energy into is the bike path on the east side of the island. And he has done an amazing job pulling people together and staying the course on that path. And early on, there was a lot of skeptics who kind of said, hey, this is just recreational. Why are we spending so much time and so much energy? And why is it the way it is? But it is truly a transformation. We now have almost 10 miles of continuous pathway. It is a tourist attraction. All the properties adjacent to it have gone up in value. And the plan is to continue expanding around the island. And I would challenge you to say, how many, imagine coming to Hawaii and being able to ride around an entire island on a bicycle perhaps without crossing a road or without dealing with all the kind of messiness of typical transportation challenges. And how appealing is that to a visitor, right? And then what does that do in terms of defining your visitor? It's somebody who's healthy, who cares about the environment, all the things that we want to bring to Hawaii. So it's not just about visitors, certainly, but it's about integrating the type of visitor and the type of environment we want with the future we want.
Sustainability equals better for everyone. Ron, how about on the Big Island?
Well, first of all, I'd say I'd agree with everything the other panelists have shared. I have the pleasure of working for a mayor who reminds us every day that we should be laser focused on maintaining and enhancing the quality of life for our residents. And part of that is maintaining lifestyle. And so we always remind us that we should focus on making Hawaii Island a great place to live so that in turn it's a great place to work and do business, and then therefore a great place to visit. And so, as Mayor Arakawa said, we try to retain an eye on the ball always in terms of all three pillars of sustainability: environment, community, and economy. Yes, it's important to be ambitious about energy or transportation goals, but not at the expense of other community-wide goals. One example on the transportation front, we're as interested in renewable transportation, not just because of the environmental benefits, but because we know that transportation costs are the second highest household expense. And so we want to get to 100% renewable transportation, but we also want to reduce the cost of transportation, improve the convenience of transportation, reduce the number of miles people commute, the amount of time spent every day commuting, increase choice for people in their transportation options. And so just try to keep an eye on all those broad community goals, consider the trade-offs across each of those goal areas for each potential solution, and make sure we're making wise, kind of data-driven decisions to try to find those areas of greatest co-benefit across those broad community goals.
Great. So that your story is how that we achieved our goals and created multiple benefits along the way that not only move the needle, but improve lives and maybe cut costs. They're made life in the Big Island and probably the islands in general more affordable. So this is a great vision. Thank you for going through that exercise. I hadn't necessarily warned you about that. But I think that's a really good framing, and in some ways, a good summation of a lot of what we've talked about here for the last 3 days. So the question is, what do you see in terms of how we get there and what's needed? And there's always the policy measures, there's the technology measures, there's the market finance, bringing in the money and educating the marketplace, the consumers and commercial and industrial sectors. So, where do you see, Mayor Arakawa, go back to you, sort of the big opportunities in terms of which audiences you think, if we could just really get them to understand certain things, we could really go much further faster?
The key component is to increase our planning so that people really understand what the goals we need to achieve. Now, the second key component is to actuate. So on Maui, we started a bus system. We started taking properties along the coastline so we don't have to worry about erosion, and we can actually have the road corridors. And we're planning to be able to expand those road corridors in case we need them in the future or for alternative transportation. We've started working on taking our sewer systems and start to convert, going to methane, going into using biofuels. So we're changing a lot of the systems that we have. At the same time, we're expanding our park system from under 200 acres of active park to over 600 acres of active park, creating ag parks. We're creating a lot of the things. We're trying to acquire almost 12,000 acres so that we can put it in conservation and make sure we have our watersheds protected. You have to take the action steps, but you also have to realize that the goals we set 10 years ago are no longer the goals of today. The goals that we have to achieve tomorrow, we don't even know what they are today. The technology has shifted dramatically. We're constantly looking at different kinds of timetables. The economy of the nation and the state changes constantly. So what can be funded by what funding source, how you can look at dependability. We'll take, for example, trying to be able to improve communications. The cell phone that I have right now, almost every month there's a new app that goes on, if not sooner, right? If we just kept the one that we had 5 years ago, we're already dinosaurs. Well, the same thing is true is happening in almost all of our industries. But at the same time, in order to get all the cell towers built in our case, in order to be able to charge all the electric vehicles, it takes time and money to be able to come up with a program to actuate. So we have to be able to figure out, well, we're going to actuate this, but it's going to be antiquated by the time we finish it. So how are we going to be able to work with it, even though we're trying to complete it because it's the best technology today? How are we going to be able to work the economics to be able to afford evolving into something new before we get to see the economic benefit of what we're creating, because it's already obsolete when we do it? And there are a lot of examples like that. So that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're saying that there's a key role for government, for you and your team to demonstrate the leadership and to show that we need, as you say, to move the goalposts further and further to keep extending the goals. But really, a lot of it falls to political leadership, in your case in Maui, to really show the way and keep beating the drum.
So we are doing the EV testing. We are doing all of that stuff. But at the same time, when we're saying, well, let's promote rooftop panels, and we have to look forward and say, well, what are you going to do with all those rooftop panels when they become antiquated and they start falling apart? They got a 20-year lifespan, right? Now you have almost every resident, you're trying to put rooftop panels on it. What do you do with all those rooftop panels after you're done? You're going to have all these secondary impacts that you have to be able to take care of. When we want to put in a bus system, we were just talking, we can order the buses today, we can get everything done, but we can't put the charging stations up. We can't get the permits to be able to do it in adequate time. We want to fix our wastewater plants, and we want to say we want to reuse all the water. But then you got new rules and regulations that say, well, you can't reuse the water until you can do testing and go to NPDES permits.
I want to keep moving it along because we're going to run out of time before we know it. But so, John, talk a little bit about from your perspective in Honolulu in terms of the big levers that you see that would help us get where we want to go further, faster.
Well, it's kind of funny that Mayor Arakawa talks about strong planning, but actually doing. My boss, Mayor Kurt Caldwell, he always jokes with me because I'm an urban planner by trade. And he goes, you planners, all you do is plan. You don't know how to execute. And if anybody's laughing, it's probably because you are the planners out there in the room. Or you're the engineers who are tired of the planners with the head in the clouds. But when it comes to that, I think the really important part that is going to change for us to achieve any level of sustainability goals is partnership. Partnership is key. You know, I mean, it is reflected in every initiative that we want to take on now. And for those that want to shy away, that want to remain siloed, that want to stay in their own yard, stay in their own playground, that is not going to work for you. What we found is, I mean, I think there's a lot of technology out there, as Mayor alluded to, but this technology does not wait for government. You know, and I think maybe the media tries to brand them as disruptors to put a negative spin on it, but you know, technology is going to always move faster than government. So I think government just has a responsibility to its citizens, but I don't believe that there should be a time when government stands in the way. But again, partnering is key. Everybody needs to understand how to work with government and how to work with the private sector to let each side do what they do best. And to that end, Mayor talked about what we're doing right now. One of my high priority initiatives is to get electric buses to be the new normal for Honolulu. And to get an electric bus on the island, I mean, it really involved us working with our Department of Design and Construction, our Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resilience, our Department of Planning and Permitting, talking to the state offices, talking to the Hawaii State Energy Office. And before we used to just buy a bus, put gas in it and run it. But to get this electric bus to become a reality, we had to look at what's outside of our arena and just partner, open up ourselves and open the partnership, collaboration between everyone.
Hey, Ben, again, where do you see the big levers to pull? And we talked a little bit about, some people saying some of these goals may even be seen as too ambitious. Does that get in the way of your moving further, faster?
So, the question about whether the goals are too ambitious, I think we've talked about a lot, and we all reference where we were 10 years ago with HCEI and how, there was clear recollection that those goals were seen as too ambitious then as well. I think the marker that the mayors have put on the wall is not necessarily completely driven by a clear and precise roadmap that gets us to where we need to go. What I understood when I heard them stand up was they were saying, this is where we need to get. And we're okay with not knowing. We've got to be opportunistic. We've got to do everything we can. We've got to keep moving forward, and we need help. And one of the ways to get help is to be clear about where you're trying to get. And so, the people in this room do so much for us. I mean, government, we can stand up here on the big stage and act like we've got it all figured out, but the reality is day-to-day in government is brutal. The processes, for good reason, are there to protect the public and all that, but it's slow, and everybody knows it. And when we're outside drinking coffee, we kind of laugh about government movement and government goals, but the reality is it's an orchestra. And so we get huge value out of the community and out of the expertise in this room, and then we bring it back and we try to set the targets that we hear.
What would it take to move it faster?
What would it take to move it faster? That's a great question. And
you want to talk about it, now you can answer.
More collaboration.
Take your time, too.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't have the answer to that. We're doing everything we can on a daily basis to move it faster.
Okay. Well, we'll move over to Ben. No, I'm sorry, to Ron. So, first of all, do you want to talk about sort of where you see the big levers to pull on the Big Island? And then I want to talk about volcanoes.
Sure. Well, if I could, I wanted to talk a little bit about the how, because we tend to focus on that a fair amount, at least from my position and within County of Hawaii government. And what I mean is a lot of what's already been mentioned is, I think John said it in the first series of questions, is let's get to a point, let's get our culture within government, working with each other and with external partners to the point where it's just part of the culture and habit and practice to always work at high levels of collaboration. And that means really changing the way we communicate, changing the way we come together to work towards shared goals. And then there's concrete sides of that as well. It's the how of how our systems within government work. We talk a lot about procurement, and it's a great example. But too often I think we work around problems in the system instead of realizing, you know what, this is a barrier that we're meeting today, but we've met it 10 times before, and we're going to run into it again 20 times in the future. How about we actually find a solution to that barrier so that this collaboration, so that the work being done to achieve ambitious goals is that much easier next time. Let's fix the system. Let's think about how we operate. And then another example of that for me is how we work with the private sector. Again, it's been mentioned a few times already, but I think we need to get increasingly intelligent about being very clear relative to large community goals, what the role of government is and what the role of the private sector is. Private sector is much more efficient than we are about innovating. How can we, on the public sector side, create the environment that allows for the marketplace to bring us solutions to our broad, ambitious community goals. Yeah.
How does everybody show up with their highest and best use? So I have to ask about the volcano right now, because it's there have been some direct impacts. So, for example, the geothermal that's cut out, I understand, almost half of the renewable energy on the island. I may have that wrong. You correct me if I did. But is that going to be a problem going forward in terms of getting back on towards the goals that you've set?
It's a near-term problem, but as you may know, Hawaii Island has the luxury of having an abundance of renewable energy sources across a range of technologies. And so I think it's just a matter of time before we surpass Kauai again as the leader on the renewable energy portfolio. Enjoy your lead while you have it, Ben.
So there's your answer, Joel. I think your answer is competition, and they have no chance because KUC is knocking it out of the park.
I love this renewable energy smackdown that's going on. This is cool. Elaine, let's get in a couple of quick questions.
Sure. So the state obviously has a 100% renewable electricity mandate and now the carbon neutrality mandate. And obviously the mayors have committed to 100% clean ground transportation. So do you feel like that's been helpful for your respective island communities in driving change, or do you think local grassroots commitments and initiatives are more impactful?
Mayor Arakawa?
The agreements set a goal, and that's really all they do. They set targets for everybody to try and achieve. Getting the public-private partnerships and getting everyone, almost everybody in this room is in the industry, getting them engaged with the targets in mind gives us the ability to drive everything. So we now have a timetable by which we have to try and achieve what we want to be able to achieve. That's all it does. The success or failure of that is how well we try and time everything. It's just like when we were in school and we were trying to do exams, right? You try and cram everything in the last minute. Now we're trying to be able to cram everything early on and get the targets reached early so we don't have to cram at the last minute. Because the irony of it all is, as technology is changing very quickly, if we don't react very quickly, by the time we start actually actuating the project, the technology has passed us by and we're working on ancient technology. So we have to really push it hard, but we also have to do it in private sector. The other challenge that comes out is, again, the long-term financing of a lot of these projects. When we started looking at it, originally photovoltaic systems, if we're looking at 20-year contracts, they were great. Today, the same photovoltaic system, now we're saying, well, the contracts we got into aren't so great because they're a lot less expensive, all the costs have changed. How do you get out of these projected deals and still be able to advance without going into convulsions as to how you're going to stay out of the legal system and getting sued? That's really what's going to be the challenge right now. But setting the targets are good.
So we're going to run out of time, and before we wrap up this session and kind of put a bow on this conference, I'd like to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Ron. As we leave here, as you leave here, what gives you the most hope?
You do, Joel.
I did not see that coming.
Well, what I mean is, bringing people together for events like this where we can share the latest and greatest technology and build new relationships and partnerships to move towards shared goals makes a tremendous difference. So thank you for creating these spaces.
Very kind, thank you. A great, amazing team who makes it really all possible, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think, Ron and Josh and the guys from Maui, Fred, have created a really strong collaboration between the four counties that has been inspirational for me. So, I think I'm the longest standing kind of sustainability person within the role, which I don't know how that happened because it was just yesterday I decided to actually work for government. But really exciting to see that. And then even on a broader level, somebody mentioned USDN earlier, tremendous resource.
So Sustainability Directors Network.
Let's learn from others, right? Let's do the obvious stuff. That gives me a lot of hope. And then finally, having youth engaged, and I'm really hoping next year we light that up even more. That was a really great piece.
Great. John?
I think what gives me the most hope is that this many people care. This many people want this to be regular, that we have a governor and 4 county mayors who have a unified goal, that they've set these goals in place for us, and while they might seem ambitious, they are longer term horizon goals, but it's kind of like they're telling us, well, you need to head north. So we're all kind of heading north together, and where we're exactly going to get to as we go, we'll figure that out. But at least we're all heading north right now. We're all headed towards the place where we need to be, and I think that gives me the most hope, that the vision is collaborated. The vision is set, the vision is in motion.
And when we came here for the first time 2 years ago for Verge 2016, you couldn't have said that. And I'm not that we're taking any credit whatsoever, but I think it really reflects the maturity of what's happened in this state, that the conversation is now seems to be moving in one direction, even though there are different flavors of it depending on local issues and concerns. So
I think to go from why to how is a big step. And I think we're at how right now. So like, kind of big kudos to everybody in the room.
Yeah, great. Mayor Arakawa, I'll give you the last word on that.
We live in communities where we have our families, we have our friends, we work together collaboratively. All of us have tried to get toward the goals together. I have real hope as we're looking and listening to our youth come up and trying to also learn and collaborate. We're breaking down all the old barriers that say cannot touch. And we're getting into a new realm where we say, what is it that we need to achieve and how are we going to get there? If we've got to move barriers, we'll move it. The fact that we're doing that gives me hope that we will get to where we need to go. Because if we kept all the old rules, we would have had the old system. As we're evolving into the future, we need to be able to regenerate pretty much the entire landscape that we're working with. And I see that happening. So that gives me a lot of hope.
That's great. And you give us all a lot of hope, and as do all of you. Please join me in thanking our panel. So that's a wrap, folks. It's been a really extraordinary 3 days, and I want to thank, first of all, the Green Biz team, which has been both in front of the scene and behind the scenes, been doing an amazing job, particularly a guy called Danny Kelly, who is literally the wizard behind the curtain back there, who has made all this stuff happen and happen so seamlessly, and his colleague, Samantha Ho, just amazing people. But there's all of those. So, but mostly thank you for being a part of this and for contributing and stepping up the way you do and all this. I think the conversations that I've heard this year have been really extraordinary, and as I said a second ago, really demonstrates the growth of what's been going on here in the islands as you pursue these incredibly ambitious goals, and how much increasingly, as we saw from visitors, particularly from the mainland, we, the rest of us in the mainland and beyond, across the Pacific, are looking to Hawaii to show what's possible, to show what can be done, to learn from your successes and your mistakes. And that's an incredible gift to all of us, and of course to the planet. So thank you for that. Thank you again for being here. We'll see you again next time.